What is up? I'm TJ. This is Uncommon, and so are you. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Uncommon. I hope you're having a great week. We are talking about husbands this week. So, whether you are brand new, like newlyweds, or you are further down the line in your marriage, like myself, I hope this resonates and applies to our lives today. We are joining Instagram and YouTube today. So, be on the lookout wherever you are attending from. Be sure to say hi and leave us a comment, and we will answer that question. I want to thank everybody on Instagram who's joined. Welcome. And those who are on YouTube as well. So each week, every Thursday, we step in here, we talk about either husbands, dads, or leaders from a men's perspective, encouraging men to be the husband, dad, and leader you are always meant to be. And so this week, we're focusing on husbands around marriage in the early years. So let's jump into it. Now, we'll have some supportive information in the description of both of these videos, devotions, articles, and videos to support this kind of topic. So let's get to it. So the boring story is my wife and I have been married for going on 32 years. And we dated about 5 to 6 years before that. So I've been chasing her down for quite the number of decades. So we met in fifth grade, and our first date was the ninth grade prom. Now, back then, I even had hair. So we're dealing with the golden years from a hair perspective. We dated all through high school and college, and then got married once we both graduated college. And so, but if I concentrate real hard, I can still think back to those years when I had hair, and it was glorious. Everything was possible, and our options were at our fingertips back then, and sounds very promising, right? Every marriage begins with that thought of hope and possibility and love. And so, what we experienced in the first 5 years really resonated throughout our marriage for the years to come. And so I wanted to just kind of speak to those early years, because there are probably people who are, whether they're married or remarried, in that first part of their marriage, going through some things that they may have not have been prepared for. You may have not have taken any marriage counseling or read any books or communicated. So the list goes as follows. So first things we experienced in the first 5 years of our marriage, moving into our apartment together, first time living together, first time we had sex, living on our own. It was the very first time either of us had lived on our own. Experiencing debt. That face I made the first time I maxed out a credit card at a store during Christmas time, that first year. It was the first and last time that has ever happened. And so it was a lesson. It's like, holy cow, thank goodness for a limit on the credit card, because I would have gone and put us in a bad situation. The very next thing we experienced, money management or a budget. Notice that came right after. And these are not in any particular order, but I just thought it was funny that I mentioned getting in debt and maxing out my credit card. It was only $1,000 back then. It wasn't like it was, $25,000 or anything. But money management and getting on a budget came soon after that visit. Work-life balance, dealing with in-laws for the first time. Soon after we got married, living in an apartment for a couple of years, we bought our first home. Got pregnant and had a miscarriage. Then we got pregnant again, had the birth of our first son. Soon after that, we moved to a single income because we wanted to homeschool Dana to stay home with Joshua, and also then homeschool our children. The loss of a loved one or two. My mother passed away. Dana's grandmother passed away. Loss of a job. So you can see some of these things are much bigger than others. Some good, some bad, all lessons to be learned. And so looking at that list, you may associate with some on that list, all of that list, or even more that's left off that list, because that list is not exhaustive. I just wanted to give you a framework to know that marriages don't start off like they're in the movies, right? They start off a little bumpy, finding your way. But what could have helped during those first few years? Knowing Christ. I didn't come to Christ until the 5th year of our marriage. Now, I wasn't hostile, right? I always thought I was a good person. Went to church once in a while, that typical CEO, the Christmas and Easter only type of thing. And praise God, I came to Christ before I had children, that I could somewhat get my act together and lead my family as a role model. And so, what could have helped? Knowing Christ, prayer, reading my Bible daily, staying in the Word, finding a mentor. Finding a mentor at that age, that part of your life is critical. Finding someone who is just a little bit ahead of you, maybe past that 5-year mark. They can give you advice, encouragement, maybe even hold you accountable of what your expectations are. Many people go into a marriage and their expectations are through the roof, so unrealistic and ungodly. No wonder so many people end up with failed marriages, dysfunctional marriages, or just bad marriages in general. Another thing that would have helped: better communication. This is kind of like a business. Every business out there thinks they do great customer service. Not everybody does. I think everybody thinks they communicate effectively. Not everybody does. You need to work on that. I've had to work on this. I am still a long way off of being an effective communicator. But that would have helped both of us. Doing a marriage study. We started doing marriage studies probably after that 5-year mark that I came to Christ. Started doing marriage studies and investing in our marriage, and then setting godly expectations. That is a great way to get on the same page with each other, and so these things would have helped. Now, remember, my wife and I have been together a long time, even before we got married. And we turn, I think it's 32 years coming up in the next year. And so you could see that those first 5 years still resonate in our marriage today. We can look back on those and say, we would have done this differently. Thank goodness we did that. I'm so glad we learned the lesson from that moment to apply to us today. And so I think what we do in those first 5 years ripple throughout the rest of our marriage years. And so the questions I have for us this week are, and you can leave your comments below to any of these questions. What has your first 5 years looked like? You don't have to go into much detail, but you can summarize. You can, give kind of a 10,000-foot view of, may have struggled a little bit. We're still working on that. It could be even some of the things you're doing right now to make your marriage work better. Another one is, have you put God at the center of your marriage from the beginning? Now, I could tell you, because I wasn't a Christian when we first got married, or at least I was not a follower of Christ. Everybody considers themselves to be a Christian if they can almost hear the church bells Oh, that's good enough. So I wouldn't consider myself to be where I am now, obviously, before I came to Christ. But putting God at the center of your marriage, I think both of you need to be on that same page to do that. And then what lessons have you and your spouse learned that you can apply to the next 5 years of your marriage? That's critical. You may go through something in the first 5 years, but if you don't learn from that and apply it to the next years to come, you're probably going to repeat some of the same traps everybody falls into. So learn from that first 5 years. It is critical. Invest in your marriage and learn from those lessons. So, a couple of suggestions as we wrap up. Make your spouse your best friend. Spend time with your spouse just on the in between times, not just the big times when you're supposed to have dinner together or holding hands, walking from the car to for church or whatever it is. It's the in between time, spending time with each other. Again, put God at the center of your relationship. Respect and honor each other. Keep private matters private. In a world where everybody dusts off their megaphone and stands on their soapbox on social media and announces to the world what they're doing, let's keep our private matters private when it comes to our marriage so that your spouse has your trust. Stay out of debt. As I was standing in, I don't recall the store, but as I was standing in the store buying all things Christmas decorations for that year, and my car got declined, lesson of stay out of debt. And we have not been in debt since then. It was a great lesson. Thankfully, it was a very inexpensive lesson. So a lesson nonetheless. Remember, your marriage is a covenant, not a contract. This is not something you can just cancel like your Netflix subscription easily. It is a covenant that you and your spouse have come into. Remember, marriage is never a 50-50. It is always 100-100. If you're only putting in 50%, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it, and your wife or your husband feels that as well. And then one thing that we didn't do early on because we probably couldn't afford it, but we have done for years and years recently, is date your spouse. At least one night a week, go out on a date. I don't care if it's to Taco Bell or if it's your favorite fancy restaurant or get a coffee, whatever it is, go date your spouse once a week and talk about and do life together. So as we end with our truth and grace segment, there's going to be those golden years. And there are going to be those rough patches. Some are going to own, some are going to do something that's going to ripple through your marriage. But then again, that's just life. It's just life happening. So be mindful that there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times. That's just life in general. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. I'm going to give you 2 pieces of scripture to look up on your own. And then the third one I'm going to read to you. So I want you to look up Ecclesiastes 4:9 and Ephesians 4:2-3. And I'm going to read Ecclesiastes 4:12 for you. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves, and a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. You, your spouse, and God. Remember that. So today's challenge is let's invest in the first 5 years of our marriage. Honestly, let's invest in that first 5 minutes of our marriage with God at the center and enjoy the next 32 plus years of marriage. So I hope that resonates with someone and you've gotten off to a great start with your marriage. And if you haven't, today's a great day to start working on that with both of you. So with that being said, since you're going to be something, you know it, be uncommon. See you guys.